It's coming down to the wire. Ooh, it's the motherfucking player haters. Oh, yeah. Player haters. And I mean down to the wire. Holy shitballs. This is no joke. Our league has gotten really serious. Hold on a second. Han, my God. Got my cat over here snoring up a storm. It almost sounded like he did it deliberately, trying to tell me to shut up. Anyways, last week we saw Walker get booted out of a playoff position. This week, he decided to show up and put himself right back in said playoff position by losing. Isn't this wonderful? It's a wonderful world where you lose, and yet because of the people in front of you losing by even bigger margins, that, well, this is what happens. So last week we saw Shane and Scott go up against each other, and Scott said, "Hold on, bro. I don't really think you belong in beating my ass." And this was a close matchup. Shane won by 4 home runs, but it wasn't enough. He tied in RBIs. He lost runs. He did have 5 stolen bases, but his average and OBP went down a little bit. Where is he lacking? Jose Altuve has kind of let him down a little bit. Corey Seager and Aaron Judge, no shocker there that those two guys putting up big numbers. He also went and grabbed himself a little home run from Nathaniel Lau, or is it Lowe? We got to figure out these names. We got to figure them out. By the way, well, we'll get into that in a second. I'll mention it. But big bro, Scotty Boy put up some Manny Machado numbers. You want to talk about somebody that we really just don't talk about anymore? It's Manny Machado. He's just like quietly a third baseman that we just don't really talk about anymore. I think we've all kind of grown tired of him, but he's just consistent. He's a consistent guy. But Manny Machado put up some numbers for him, and Juan Soto was able to get the runs, and Paul Goldschmidt actually had himself a nice little week up against some okay teams. But again, he fell right back down to earth in that Chicago series. But yeah, and it was pitching that kind of I'd say let Shane down. Tied in strikeouts, 1-1 win, but with a 6.32 ERA. Last week, we all had some high ERAs. I haven't looked at all the other ones, but I know that I was victim to just terrible pitching. And I want to say one of the stats I didn't get until Sunday, and that was a win. Just not really good pitching numbers ever since the All-Star break, in my opinion. Edward Cabrera hooked him up, and Yusei Kikuchi had a good first game in Houston. But for Shane, Zach Gallen looked to be about his best pitcher of the week. Everybody else just again had putrid numbers and nothing that was assisting. But man, he dropped Marcus Stroman. That ERA really just hurt him, and Rodriguez. But it was like those and Kyle Finnegan, they were not high enough compared to what Shane had, even though they were in high numbers, but they must have left the game fairly early. So Shane falls to Scott 6-4. And then we saw this one. This is getting interesting. This is an interesting development, if you will. Eric is not going away. He is not going quietly into that good night. Last week, he faced Josh. Josh took 2 stats, one of which he won by 1 strikeout. 1 strikeout. Had he not won that strikeout category, it would have been 10-1 or 9-1, thus furthering Josh's demise or departure from the playoffs. But last week, again, Eric just showed that he's got a team that is not going to go uh, without a solid fight. And if he can put up, in my opinion, numbers like this and defeating teams, he might have a really good shot of getting into 6th place. Now, again, the teams that are ahead of him, their gap to close is a lot smaller, but he was able to get some good stats from Martinez. And at this trade that he got from getting Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is just, man, it is coming back to bite Brian in the ass. 8.38. He's batting .536. Vladdy has just gone stupid in this past month. And then, of course, he's benching Volpe, and Volpe has actually started to turn back around. And man, in the last, few weeks, he's really started to look like himself again. Probably the resurgent or the recently acquired Jazz Chisholm. That is a lineup. I mean, it's just so crazy how one player really changes the dynamic of a team and the dynamic of a player. I mean, look at Randy Arozarena. Ever since he's gone to Seattle, things have started to really turn around for Arozarena, and he's starting to look like the Randy that we all came to appreciate and why he was such a sought-after outfielder. But you want to talk about somebody that was riding coattails, newly acquired Jake Berger, who is looking to just continue his tear this week, no doubt, against me. And we'll get into the matchups here in a minute. But Jake Berger, 4, and 8. I mean, all he does is drop burgers down. But yeah, he's going to be an issue moving forward as long as he stays healthy for Josh. But yeah, Eric just not going away, even with his putrid lack thereof pitchers. I mean, he was able to compete with a guy that has more pitchers than him. And yeah, he has lost some arms over the last few weeks with trades that he's made. But again, Eric, 1 strikeout away, would have taken this one 9-1. But you just look across the board. He had a very nice 3 ERA, one of the better ERAs that I've seen so far. And he's not going away. Not going away. So if you play Eric, your team just needs to be on board. Finally, Jesus did the Lord's work. I knew you could, sir. And this is another team that we need to be mindful of. Jesus' team does not have a quit factor in them either, because, I mean, he's got a really good, solid lineup. When you look at the names that are on his team, he's got Salvador Perez, Josh Naylor, Spencer Steer, Stout, Smith, Schwarber, Luis Roberts. I mean, and he went and, he's held on to Gunnar Henderson despite all of my efforts to try to get Gunnar. And he's got an offensive team that is not going to be one that you can just, look blindly at and be like, this is a cakewalk. And he's also got some really good pitchers too. Hunter Green has definitely turned into a pitcher that a lot of people are going to start seeking next season for sure. But he's also like Wu, who's had a couple of injuries, or setbacks, if you will, this season. But when he pitches very well. The guys that are kind of letting him down are guys like Kevin Gausman, and he's hit or miss with Sonny Gray. But again, Jesus went up against, guys like Corbin Burns and Tariq Skubal had a bad week. So when Skubal has been top 10, 15 pitcher this season, but he was able to hold on to a lower ERA. Again, high numbers, 5s and 4 between the two, but the strikeouts is where he lost, and he only lost by 1 win, but he was able to get the quality start and the 2 save plus holds. He took the runs and the RBIs by 1. This was a close matchup, and you would expect that from Nick. I mean, he's got, guys like Turner and uh, Ellie De La Cruz and this Luis Garcia. I mean, he's just, you want to talk about a batting lineup that looks very similar to something like Walker would actually have. This is it. I mean, Anthony Santander he is just hitting everything that he sees here recently, and he put up some big numbers last week. And so did this Garcia Jr., the second baseman for the Washington Nationals. Just kind of some under the radar players, but he's getting, very good stats from them. And he made a trade this week, getting rid of O'Neal Cruz and Vinny Pasquantino. But when he acquired Corbin Burns, it kind of made him a little bit of a threat. Now, Corbin did not have a good game for him, and that may be something to monitor on down, because that was Cleveland. That was, wow, I don't know why I said it like that. That was Cleveland. That was Cleveland's team. So it'll be very interesting to see for sure moving down the stretch. Let me see. All right, I'm at 11 minutes, so not too bad. Last week, we also saw Ray go up against Brian, and Brian's been trying to nip at the heels of those that are in the 6th place, myself a few weeks ago, and Ray wasn't having any of it. She dominated in the home runs and the RBIs. She took the runs away from him. She was down by the stolen bases, just didn't get everything that she needed, but ultimately, I mean, just across the board, she's getting solid stats all year from Ozuna. She lost Westberg, unfortunately. Jurickson Profar to this day is still better than Yordan Alvarez in our league. Say what you want, talk your bullshit, whatever. She was able to be another one of those teams that benefited from not having the highest ERA. Again, 4 and 5 respectively between these two teams. But just was not able to get the strikeouts that she needed, mainly because, I mean, she's lost Lopez, she lost Reese Olson, she lost Max Scherzer, and she's, trying to rebuild, if you will, that pitching lineup that's kind of been, if you will, the weakest spot of her team. I mean, she's got Seth Lugo, who is by far her best pitcher. And Flaherty now, but I would have to say that she's just not going to get the high strikeout numbers from some of these guys. She did get a good game from Sean Manaea. 11 strikeouts from that cat. So, but anyways, Ray said 8-4. Don't mind if I hold on to second place, and it moved her a little bit closer to Shane for sure. She's got one of those bye week spots that everybody's pining for now. The other matchup that we mentioned earlier, Jason against Chris. Jason saw his spot come into question last week, and then he was able to, at least for the time being, hold on to and defeat Walker and move Walker out of, rather assist Walker in getting into the top 6 spot. So that to me is what a little buddy system you got going on there, right, guys? So let's look at this matchup. Walker just really got stupid numbers last week from, again, some, I wouldn't say no-name people, but just people that, you're not really, grabbing in the first 2 rounds. Jock Peterson, Lamont Wade Jr., Zach Neto, who we just grabbed, Matt Chapman. I mean, these are guys that, 4th, 5th round players, but when they're putting up numbers like this and able to at least compete, he tied in RBIs. He did not win, but I mean, this was a close matchup for these guys in batting stats. And if not for Jose Ramirez, I mean, Jason said it, if not for him putting up the numbers that he put up, where would Jason be? Especially last week, it would have been an even more it would have been flipped, the score definitely, and Walker would have beaten Jason. But it is what it is. And these two guys had probably the best pitching ERAs between the two of them, with a 3.89 for Jason and a 4.77, and only two strikeouts separated. But again, when you look at all the numbers across the board, these two guys put up the most wins and quality starts and save plus holds out of any matchup. Myself and Sean, we faced off against each other. And this was a week where at the beginning of it, I was cracking my knuckles. I want to say I had one day where I want to say it was Tuesday, where I'm leaning over and showing Ray my numbers. I'm like, I got 2 home runs from Jazz Chisholm. He put up 5 of the 7 RBIs in that game against Philly. I was getting home runs from, like, I want to say I had 6 that day and 5 the day before, and I was putting up great numbers. And then the numbers started to kind of fizzle out, and Sean started hitting home runs again. And he started grabbing up 2-3 home runs himself in a day. He got 2 from Matt Olson on Wednesday. I want to say the next day he got another one. David Fry gave him one. And that was a day that was just really demoralizing for me, because I had 0 batters. I lost Luis Rengifo, and I had not one batter, not one. Like, how are you supposed to compete in this world? And luckily for me, my Monday and Tuesday stats carried me for that Thursday, because I had 0 stats. And he was able to get, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 2 runs. I mean, that was very critical, considering that I only beat him by 3 runs, and therefore I only beat him by 3 home runs. And it just so happens, obviously, those 3 home runs were what set us apart. And I only beat him by 2 RBIs. This was not an easy matchup by any means. When I'm looking at Wednesday, I think I had a batting average of over 400, and he had a 224 and was still able to put up the numbers that he was able to put up. I was able to get some wins from pitchers, but it took a while. I didn't get any, I want to say, until Saturday and Sunday. And I want to say one of the wins came from a relief pitcher the day prior on Saturday. Zach Wheeler was able to get me one, but Rodon and Jason Adam got me one. But yeah, not until Saturday did I see that. But, between him and I, we both had not very good ERAs. My whip obviously was what was lower. Again, I won 12-0, but this was not a good pitching week for me. I did not have the save plus holds that would be competing very well, and I only had 2 quality starts to his 1, and thankfully he didn't get a win. And he had more pitchers than I did. In the long run, he had more pitchers, but they ended up getting, just pulled earlier or destroyed, like Kyle Harrison. But I was able to, really ride the coattails, if you will, if I'm going to use that line, of my relief pitchers. So that was a big week for me. I needed it. 12-0. It's not stapled me by any means into the actual conversation of a team that will make it to the playoffs. And let's dive into what I'm actually talking about. By the way, while I hear the rain, I hope everybody is safe. I know that Debbie, I thought we had Chris coming. I thought this hurricane was named Chris. Maybe the Chris fizzled out. I don't know. But I thought we had a Chris, but this is Debbie. And I know it's dumping a lot of rain across, our state. So I just hope everybody's dry, safe. And, unfortunately, some people had to work today. I know mailmen were working today. Yes, the Postal Service was operating. So was Amazon and FedEx and UPS. So, I know that those guys were working, and obviously law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, all the essential workers. So anyways, we're looking at right now week 18, and Josh is going to clearly make a statement as best as he can whether or not he belongs. I believe the score right now is 7-0 if I'm looking at it, and it's because he is already logging pitching points. But Josh is out of the playoffs if they were to start this week. He's not, and it's not. So Josh is definitely going to need to play the best manager that he can this week and play the right matchups. He's got team players with power and the ability to outpitch me hands down. So it's going to take my pitching staff to at least win me the two categories of ERA and WHIP, and hopefully save plus holds. We'll see how it goes. But I know that last week, the 12-0 victory was definitely a huge assist to me in helping me at least stay relevant in the playoff conversation, even if I lose this week, hopefully not by a 12-0 margin of victory. Let me actually, before I get into the matchups, let me explain where we are right now. Ray is only 2 games back from Shane after he lost last week and she won. 2 games is what separates those two. I am back by 6 games of him. So 4 games of her. And only by a game and a half is Nick from me. This is where the numbers start to increase a little bit. Jason is 11 games back, just 11 games back from first place. And Walker, wrapping out the top 6, is 13 games back from Shane. So 2 really good weeks from really the 4th, 5th, and 6th team could put them into the position of 1st and 2nd. That's how close this is really going to be. Now, again, 7th place now is Josh, 15 and a half games back. That's it, 15 and a half games back from Shane, and only 2.5 games back from Walker. He just needs to stay relevant, and I wouldn't even necessarily say win. Again, it's not. Now he's going to be riding, and I'm going to use it again, the coattails of the other teams that are ahead of him, their losses, if you will. How big is their loss? So the matchups that need to be being watched closely between, honestly, myself, Nick, really any of us in the top 6, if we lose by big sets of margin for these teams that are below us, clearly they're going to piggyback off of that. Now, here's where the 8, 9, and 10 teams come into play. Jesus is 25 games back from first place, but that's not who he needs to be chasing. He's only 12 games back from Walker. And 14 games back is Brian. And 19 games back, only 19 games back from, I'm sorry, my math is terrible. 12 games back from Walker is Jesus. And 14 games back is Brian. And then, I said that right. 19 games back, not 20. 19 games back is Eric. If Eric continues to put up the margins of victory and the people ahead of him start to falter, we've got enough time, in my opinion, to keep him in the loop. I just feel like Mandalorians, wow, there was a switch between the two of them, only by about 3 games, but Scott was able to jump Sean in the rankings. But Eric is not out of this by any stretch of the imagination. And this week, there's probably a little smile, if you will, going across his face and Jason's face about who they're facing this week. And again, if I was Jason, I would not tread lightly, nor Eric, because he also is facing a team that just beat the number one team in our league. So if I had to say what's a matchup of the week to watch, it's obviously going to be Shane versus Nick. These two teams right now, one is trying to get better separation to secure his spot in the bye week, whereas Nick has now felt a little bit of a bump down based off of my win and his loss last week. And so he needs to try to stay relevant. Shane is going up against, the current reigning champ 2 years in a row, and Nick. All of us would love nothing more than to see a huge victory, especially the ones that are underneath, because if Shane can pull off like a 9-2 or an 8-3 victory, and the rest of us stay a tie, whatever, push Nick down. I don't know, I know that Nick's got this target on his back, but bro, you're the one with the Franklin. We got to get you the fuck out of there, okay? Get you out of there, and then we know it's going to be somebody new. And I like how Shane is trying to, butter my biscuit with saying that it's going to be me. Shut the fuck up, bro. What color am I going to write it in? I'll write it in blood, okay? How about that? Oh, wow, just hit puberty. Ray's facing off against Jesus. This is not going to be an easy matchup for her. And Brian and Walker are facing off. But again, I think Shane and Nick is the matchup of the week. But myself and Josh are definitely co-matchup to watch, because Josh has to do everything in his power to get Walker out of there. And again, like I said, Brian, Jesus, and Eric, they're not out of this. They just need the teams that they're playing to lose and lose big, and they need to do their own work. So I know that Jason and Eric are probably chomping at the bit, hoping that these are, I wouldn't necessarily say easy weeks, but that they're able to get a big gap, especially Jason. He's seeing that I just won 12-0 last week against the very team he's playing against, and he would love nothing more than to win 12-0 himself. So that's where we stand. There are two teams. I was not the first one. Let me celebrate this victory. I was not the first one to 60. That would be Brian. I did join the 60 club this week. We do have Rally Monkeys, Walker, and Josh, and Jason. All three of them are in the 50s. And I can tell you, I'm well aware that, Walker's going to do his best to hold on to those last two moves. But the trade deadline is August the 8th. That is in 3 days. Now's the time. If you think you got what it takes or what you need to get in there, you need to do it now. I think we've seen some trades. Heck, we might be seeing some trades right now. I just saw that trades appear to have been being made. Transactions. There we go. I know there was a trade between myself and Walker last night. There was a trade between Ray and myself over this weekend. And then the big trade, Corbin Burns, Vinny Pasquantino, and O'Neal Cruz. So, yeah, get your trades in, people. Now's the week. Don't hesitate. You've heard it here. So, you need to do it. Again, everybody be safe. It's going to be a wet week. So, yeah. That's all I got. Keep it real. Yeah, that's all I got. It's the motherfucker. Hey,